Do I have a slab of new metal albums for you this week? Welcome, metalheads. I'm the host of Heavy Metal Philosophy and writer for Metal Digest, JonBarbas. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for this week's album art of the week. It's the weekend. That means we got new metal albums to talk about, and I'm bringing you my 5 favorite. But as is customary for the weekend show, we always talk about the big album releases before we jump into the top 5. And this week is stacked, so we got to get through these quickly. Let's do it. All right, first up, and this one's huge for me, one of my childhood favorites, Arch Enemy. They got a new record called Blood Dynasty. I got my hands on this one early. Y'all know what that means. My written reviews already published in Metal Digest. Links in the description to all my writings. And there's a new record from Alien Weaponry called Te Ra. This is Maori groovy thrash metal. Y'all know I dig this one now. And this one's interesting. Amin Ra dropped 2 EPs today. One called Detorn and the other one with Fang and Claw. Why'd they drop 2 EPs like that on the same day instead of just a full album? Either way, I won't look a gift horse in the mouth. And this one's huge. We recently talked about this band on an episode of the podcast called What is Post-Black Metal? Death Heaven with lonely people with power. And I am happy to report that this record has the return of black metal into their sound. And there's a new album from Memphis Mayfire called Shapeshifter, which is an apt title because there's a lot of different sounds on this one. And lastly, before we jump into the top 5, Under Oath with The Place After This One. One of those metalcore bands that still sounds like metallic hardcore because they're one of the OGs. Now let's do the top 5. Coming in at number 5, Divine Hubris with Ad Nauseum. Now, this is listed as black metal out of Colorado on Metal Archives, but this record, I don't know that I would call it black metal. There's a lot of different genre things going on here. I hear In Flames riffs, I hear Seven Dust, alternative metal, I hear Mellow Death, and yes, a little bit of Blackened influence. Regardless of the genre and the classification, it is heavy. Coming in at number 4, The Warriors with Burn Yourself Alive, metallic hardcore out of California. And yes, I mean that old school metallic hardcore. Think like Hatebreed, except for this is a lot thrashier and a lot punkier, and I dig it. Coming in at number 3, Doomsday with Never Known Peace, crossover thrash out of the Bay Area of California. And yep, the Bay Area spawned some of the biggest names in thrash during the Cold War, but now we are in another insane time, which is going to spawn a whole new wave of thrash metal. This has the pensive and frantic riffs that the area is known for, but it's got the crossover punk bite to the vocals, and the crossover arrangements are like this too. Every song is tight. There's no epics here. There's no Call of Cthulhu. There's no Fade to Black. Every song is around 3-ish minutes. Aggressive, fast, punchy, pissed off. Modern societal problems call for modern thrash. Coming in at number 2, speaking of punk and metal, Galgaberg with Cerberus. This is death metal / crust punk out of Norway. It's got the filthy and groovy riffs of death metal, but it's got the scathing social commentary and bite to the vocals of punk. Speaking of punk, the drums have a D beat, which gives the normally death metal riffs a sort of upbeat vibe, and it's a tight 20 minutes. So right when that D-beat punk sort of thing is starting to become just a little bit one note, the record's over. They know exactly when they've built everything to the top of the crescendo, and then they leave you wanting more. Bravo. And hey, before we do number 1, here's where I normally hawk my merch or protein powder or something like that, but I got something else I want to show you. So recently I had someone comment, "Hey John, every time you end an episode, you say to read philosophy and listen to metal. And you're always recommending all this great metal, but what philosophy books do you recommend?" So I think that's a great question, and let me make a recommendation. A lot of philosophy books are super hard to read. I have to sit there and read a paragraph, and then I'm like, what did I just read? And I read it again, and then I look up what the things mean, and then I read it again, and then I still don't get it, and then I watch YouTube videos to try and get an explanation, and then once I have something to point me in the right direction, then I read it again, and now I'm finally starting to understand it, and then maybe I got to come back a little bit later and read it again. It's quite difficult because most philosophers write their books for other philosophers and not really for common people like you and me. So they're always pretty difficult to read, and I don't let that stop me. But there are really easy philosophy books to read out there too, and that's one of many reasons why Albert Camus is my favorite philosopher. So I'm going to recommend The Stranger. This is one of my favorite books. It's a fictional story, which is sort of an allegory for his absurdist philosophy. Real small, real easy to read, entertaining. This is one of my favorite books and one of my favorite philosophers. So if you want to check this out, I'll have a link in the description where you can get you a copy of this pretty cheap. That's be my first recommendation. Now, with that out of the way, I want to ask y'all, what do you think? Is a book recommendation a welcome part of this show? Is this a segment y'all would be into? Let me know, because obviously I can do this a lot every week, or we can pivot to something else. Let me know. Now let's do number one. Coming in at number one, Decrepacy with deific mourning death metal out of Oregon. Let me tell you why I picked this one for number one. Usually for each segment, I try to do some wordsmith thing to describe how this album makes me feel or what it makes me think of. I dream of my best analogies. We're not doing that on this one. Let me tell you why I chose this one as number one. The opening riff sounds like the aftermath of an explosion. I'm like, oh, cool. And then when that first chug hit, the headbanging was involuntary. The stank face was immediate. When that first thing hits, your immediate reaction is just, ooh. That's my favorite thing about death metal. That's why this one's number one. The fun isn't over yet because we still got Dealer's Choice and Album Art of the Week. All right, as y'all know, the Dealer's Choice segment allows me to pick records that I wouldn't normally pick. So this week, I'm going with Telepathy and Transmissions. This is atmospheric sludge / post-metal out of the UK. And normally, I wouldn't pick instrumental albums. It's quite difficult for an instrumental album to hold my attention, but this one certainly did, thanks to some clever but disgusting riffs, and they're constantly changing it so you never go into that trance that a lot of instrumental music can do, plus this sort of dystopian cyberpunk vibes. You know that's going to appeal to me, so that's why I'm picking this one. I really dug it. You will too if you check it out. Now let's do the album art of the week. The album art of the week, I picked Grey Aura, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce this album title. Text is on the screen, and as always, every band's Bandcamp link will be in the description so that these records are easy to find. And let me just be honest with y'all, the reason why I picked this one this week is because literally every other album that released today just looks like a standard heavy metal album cover. They all look like that. If I put a spread of them on the screen, you'll see what I mean. Standard heavy metal over and over and over again. This is the only one that stood out. It's a abstract oil painting with the two eyes in weird places, and it's bright yellow, but the music doesn't sound bright yellow. This is some nasty post-black metal. I suppose it does have some rather up sections, but for the most part, I'd call it abrasive. I wouldn't call it beautiful and alluring like I would this art right here. If you want to stand out from the other metal albums on the shelf at the record store or on Bandcamp. It doesn't seem like it's that hard these days. Everybody wants to be, I don't know, traditional with their album covers, which is cool. I love skulls and dragons and castles as much as the next guy. But for this segment, I'm looking for what stands out, what makes me curious, and so we're going with Grey Aura. Did you like any of these bands this week? If you did, please hit the like button. That's the most important thing. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. That is the best way to help heavy metal philosophy, is to watch, and to watch all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. If you want to support beyond that, head to JonBarbas-shop.fourthwall.com, pick you up some merch. Or if you click on that link in the description to buy that book, it's a little affiliate link. I'm not sponsored by the book merchant or anything like that. It's just, I'll get a little cut of the book and you get an awesome book. Thank you so much. But most importantly, read philosophy, listen to metal. I love you.